Painting on a platform of progressive reforms, LA County District Attorney George Gascon faces opposition from his own prosecutors for enacting those changes. He's also facing the threat of a recall. Recently, 17 LA counties out of LA's 88 cities recorded votes of no confidence.
So the question, is this politics as usual or a sign of a DA out of touch with voters? DA Gascon joins us live now to reflect on his first 7 months in office. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Sure, my pleasure. Good morning.
So we have a lot of questions for you because a lot has happened since you were last on the KTLA Weekend Morning News. You campaigned on a promise to overhaul LA law enforcement. Now you're getting a lot of pushback from implementing policies like not seeking the death penalty, barring sentencing enhancements. Some of your own prosecutors raised a lot of concerns about what's happening with homicide numbers. We know that they're up 300 from last year, exceeding 300 homicides from last year, the first time in a decade that this has happened. So talk about how you can justify your changes as crime is on the rise and so many people have concerns.
Well, look, first of all, let's go back for a second, because the 300 you're talking about, that was last year's homicides. You know, homicides have been in the increase for over a year, and they have been in the increase throughout the country. You know, I've been in office for a little over 5 months, so it defies logic to say that what I'm doing is causing an increase that had been going on way before I got here. And the reasons for that are many. But, you know, what we're seeing is a Republican effort, you know, quite frankly, throughout the nation and certainly here in LA County, to basically want to change the results of an election. The people that are campaigning for the recall are the same people that oppose me. But the reality is that I got elected with, you know, a large majority, over 250,000 votes over my opponent. And the people that were supporting me before are supporting me now. And the people that were not supporting me, not only they're not supporting me now, but frankly, they're not satisfied with waiting through a normal 4-year cycle. They're trying to alter the results of an election immediately, as they are doing at the state level, and as they're doing it at the national level. So I think it's important to put this into context as to where we are. As to the rising in crime, the reality is that crime has been going up. In fact, in LA County, we had a 25% increase in violent crime over the last 7 years, because we continue to do the same things over and over again and expect a different result. What I am doing is I am revamping the way that we address violence by using science, using data, taking a public health lens approach to the way that we deal with crime. And we're already well in our way to do so, because it is important that we not only look at the crime that we have today, but that we create a sustainable model so we don't continue to go back through the cycles over and over again. But again, the increase in homicide has been going on for over a year, and it is a problem that is not only in LA County, but it's a national problem.
Mr. Gascon, with all due respect, though, you said that you were elected overwhelmingly by voters. But I don't know if the voters necessarily signed up for some of the policies that you're implementing. For instance, you talked about crime was going up. You want to do away with what's called the hardcore gang unit. So with crime going up steadily, why would you want to do things like get rid of the hardcore gang unit when we're seeing an increase in things like homicide, we're seeing an increase in property crime, aggravated assault, things like arson? Some would argue that if you take away consequences for committing crimes, they're only going to increase. Are we not seeing that play out in real time?
So, Mark, actually, first of all, you know, property crime is not going up. Okay, LA City property crime is actually down. But let's go back to the hardcore gang unit. What we are doing is we're shifting the way of a model that was created in the 1980s, which is purely based on arrest and prosecution, to a model that takes a public health approach to the whole system of justice. We are bringing prosecutors to police stations. We already started with our community violence reduction program. We are bringing police, but we're also bringing county public health. We're bringing community groups. We're bringing community interventions. And we are bringing a different approach to the work that not only looks at arrest and prosecutions, but more importantly, we're looking at dealing with early intervention and prevention, and when it is necessary, to have the arrest and the prosecution. So what we're doing is we're shifting the model. We're not moving away from the work. We're taking a holistic approach to the work, recognizing that we've had a problem that has been going on for a very long time, and addressing it in a way that is going to yield better results in the future. So it is not that we're walking away from the work. or that there will be no consequences. It is bringing the right level of intervention to the work. And this is what I campaign on. And yes, over 250,000 people voted for me over my opponent
Let's talk
on
about
this platform.
let's talk about the consequences. And, obviously, things are very emotional, especially when you talk about very specific cases involving children. It becomes very emotional. You talk about victims who are coming out very frustrated. Your office dropped its bid for the death penalty in the case against the alleged killers of 10-year-old Anthony Avalos. That story, that child breaks so many hearts in our community. Deputy District Attorney Jonathan Hatami opposed your decision. Talk about how you defend your choice, even when your own prosecutors object and when you see the backlash from victims.
Well, I mean, let's look at victims. We just recently had a poll conducted in the county, and 60% of the victims of violent crime and survivors of violent crime in the county agree with, by the way, what is the same results of nationwide polls that indicate that victims of violent crime, they want accountability, but they also want rehabilitation and redemption because they understand that in order for us to provide a better approach to creating a sustainable safety for all of us, we have to deal with recidivism. The death penalty hasn't worked. And that is a reality. And the death penalty has failed twice in LA County, by the way, when it's brought in front of the voters. And yet the prosecutors in this county, some of them, continue to insist against the will of the voters to continue to prosecute cases in the death penalty. What we need is the right level of intervention, and the death penalty is not one. First of all, the death penalty is horribly expensive. Secondly, it's being looked at right now by the Supreme Court as possibly for the racial implications of the fact that on its application is clearly race bias. Thirdly, it doesn't deter crime. It doesn't stop the horrendous cases like the very unfortunate case of Avalos' case. And then fourthly, if we make a mistake, and it is well established that sometimes the system makes mistakes, it's irreversible. So let's begin by being honest about what the death penalty will do, because the death penalty is not deterring, will not stop these horrendous crimes from occurring. But you know what will reduce the likelihood of these horrendous crimes? They're reducing the high levels of recidivism that we have nationwide, but in this county, approximately 70% of the people that we touch, we never deal with the underlying problems, and they come back and they reoffend. If you look at anybody that's in our prison systems, over 80% of them, they were victims of crime themselves. So until we start looking at this issue in a more holistic way, we're going to continue to deal with this wave and this problem. This is like trying to use a Band-Aid to cure cancer.
So at what point do you sort of realize, well, we can agree with you to say you want to move away from some of these policies, but at what point do you say, wow, maybe my policies aren't working? Because that's what we're hearing from a lot of voters out there and a lot of citizens. They feel that your policies, right, are making things worse and not better. What do you say to that?
But we have to look at the facts. Let's move away from the rhetoric of the same people that run against me, the same people that run to support the death penalty, the same people that have run to support a systemic racist system that we have. Let's move away from that and let's look at the reality. I have been in office for 5 months. The policies that we're talking about had just been implemented. Homicides were on the rise way before I got here, and they were on the rise under the old policies. Look, if the death penalty worked, if all this stuff worked, we would not have had an increase in the past. In fact, we would not have had a 25% increase in violent crime in the last 6 or 7 years. You know why we have the increase? Because they don't work. Because we continue to have the same problems over and over again, because as some people would say, the definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result.
There's no doubt. There's no doubt that change is not easy, and it does take time. We hear what you're saying with that. But how difficult is it to come into this position, into office, and have so much backlash and have the talk about a recall? You're saying you haven't had a chance to get the job done. Have you changed your mind about anything? Do you have any regrets about anything? Would you do anything differently?
No, actually, look, I mean, I came into this job with eyes wide open. The same people that were opposing me during the campaign, I knew that they were going to continue to oppose me if I were to be elected. The work that we're doing is questioning. It is altering the way business has been done for decades. There is both political and monetary interest in keeping the status quo. And systems never reform easily. And it doesn't matter whether you're going to clean energy or you're reforming the criminal justice system or you're doing anything else that is new. The status quo is always going to push back. But the reality is, and I want to underline this, I run on a very clear platform. Is a platform that is supported by science and research. Which, by the way, if you go on my website, there are academic works in almost every one of those policies showing why this is better than what we have done in the past. But the fight was one that I fully anticipated, and it's a necessary fight because we're fighting for the soul of our community. We're fighting for our collective well-being. And unfortunately, this is not an LA County fight only. This is a national fight. We have people that still believe that Joe Biden is not the legitimate president of this country. And the same people that are having those arguments are the same people that are working against me today. Look, we got signs that say recall on one side, on the other side say COVID is a hoax. Okay? Contextualize this because I think it's important. I think that we need to get away from the sound bites of people that have been using the same tired old arguments over and over again. This is a politics of fear, and politics of fear and race unfortunately work. And what I'm doing is very clearly fighting a system that has resided in this space for many years.
Mr. Gascon, we're out of time this morning, but can you agree to come back to talk with us, let's say in maybe another 5 months, and we can see how your policies line up with the crime statistics, and we can see whether or not more change or maybe less change needs to be implemented?
Mark, I would love to come back. And again, I would hope that we look at this the same way that we looked at the old system, because, you know, I have been in the system for nearly 40 years. I'd never had people question me before when we were mass incarcerating people and crime was going up about mass incarcerating not working. You know, we need to be thoughtful. We need to be really honest about what we're doing. Otherwise, we're never going to get to a better place. But I'd love to come back. In fact, I hope sooner than 5 months, maybe about 90 days out.
Well, we appreciate the discussion. That's where it starts. It's really important to be talking about all of these things. Thank you for your time, DA George Gascon.